At this hotel. And in January 1973,
LiveJevaGist.com, JHyphenEFFS.com, commentary.
And he arranged a meeting there with two men who he had never met before from the Turkish consulate. It was the consul general and another diplomat from Turkey. And they were basically lured out to this bungalow at this nice hotel on the beach in Santa Barbara because this distinguished older gentleman had contacted the consulate and told them basically that he had a gift for the government of Turkey. He had come into possession of some priceless artifacts that had been stolen from the palace of the Sultan of Turkey in the 1800s, and he wanted to repatriate these items back to the people of Turkey. So the consul general and this other diplomat, they drove out to have lunch with this man at the hotel. They were going to collect the artifacts on behalf of their government. And when they sat down to lunch with him at this beautiful bungalow at this swanky hotel, he shot them both in the head. This was the assassin. He did not know either of the diplomats personally. It was a political assassination. And then 2 years later, it happened again.
Very specific.
Except this time, it wasn't in California. This time, it was in Austria. It was the Turkish ambassador to Austria. He was at work at the Turkish embassy in Vienna. He was in his study at the embassy. 3 men with automatic weapons stormed into the embassy and killed him. And just like what happened 2 years earlier in Santa Barbara, there's no indication at all that there was any personal connection between the gunman and the ambassador who they killed. It was an assassination. And then 3 days later, it happened again in Paris. This time it was the Turkish ambassador to France. He was with his driver in his official car marked with diplomatic plates. They were outside the embassy in Paris. They were ambushed by multiple gunmen. Both men were killed. So at that point, that was 2 Turkish ambassadors in 2 different countries killed over 3 days. And that was 2 years after the guys in Santa Barbara had been killed. But it kept happening through the 70s, through the 80s. In 1977, it was the Turkish ambassador to the Vatican. He was ambushed and shot to death on the street outside his house in Rome. Then in 1979, it happened again. The Turkish ambassador to the Netherlands. This was a particularly terrible attack because they didn't actually kill the ambassador. They killed his son. His son was a grad student who was driving to college in The Hague in the Netherlands. He was in his VW Bug, stopped at a traffic light, and a gunman walked up and shot him through the passenger side window and killed him. In 1982, it happened in Southern California again. It was the Turkish consul general. He sat at his car at a red light in the Westwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. He was ambushed and killed. Later that same year, it happened in America again. This time in Somerville, Massachusetts. It was a Turkish honorary consul. It was the exact same MO. He was stuck in rush hour traffic. A guy in a jogging suit ran up holding 2 high-powered pistols, shot the honorary consul through the window of his car and killed him. And later that same year, it happened in Canada. It was the Turkish military attaché to Canada, same strategy. He was driving to work on the morning of August 27th, 1982. Stopped for a red light. Car near him also came to a stop. Gunman got out of the stopped car, walked over to Attila Altikat's vehicle, and shot him through the window. Now, that monument we were showing there for a second, just a few years ago in Ottawa, they actually erected a monument to that Turkish diplomat. Right next to where he was killed in the street in Ottawa. It's beautiful. It's this wood and metal sculpture. It includes more than 1,000 handcrafted silver plates that were made in Turkey specifically for the memorial. But that one in Ottawa, that wasn't the last one. I could keep going with the list. That pattern of Turkish diplomats and their family members being targeted and assassinated, that pattern, it kept going well into the 1990s, all over the world. Right? All over the world. And you know what? All over the world, for all sorts of different reasons, diplomacy can be dangerous work. For a lot of different countries' diplomats. But for Turkish diplomats, for a period of about 20 years, they were in a very special and very heightened kind of danger compared to diplomats from everywhere else. Because there really was a worldwide terrifying campaign of targeted assassinations that was directed at Turkish ambassadors, at Turkish diplomats all over the world.
So
it was Armenian extremists, Armenian militants. Armenian militants made a strategic decision in the early 1970s, starting with those killings in Santa Barbara. They made a decision that they would try to get their revenge for the genocide of Armenians during World War I. And their form of revenge would be that they would kill diplomats from the nation of Turkey all over the world, even in places where you'd think they would be safe, even in Canada, even in the United States. And this was not personal revenge. None of the diplomats who were targeted over these 20 years, none of them were even born when the Armenian genocide happened. But again, this wasn't a personal beef against any of them. This was terrorism, right? This was a politically motivated, strategic, serial homicide campaign against Turkish diplomats in particular. And because of that unique and terrible and honestly very recent history, having a diplomat, having an ambassador assassinated in Turkey, which happened today, that is a special kind of national shock in the nation of Turkey. Because Turkey, more than any other nation in the modern era, they know the pain of having their diplomats targeted for assassination because of some larger political point. I mean, even if there weren't that history, even in the absence of that peculiar history that Turkey has with this issue, I mean, the circumstances of this killing today in Ankara, the Turkish capital, the circumstances of this were enough to shock the world, right? And the Russian ambassador to Turkey, he had been in Turkey since 2013. Before that, he had spent decades in a place you would think of as much more dangerous. He had spent decades in North Korea for decades before this as Russia's ambassador in Pyongyang. But today, by chance, there happened to be a very talented AP photographer on site at this event today where the Russian ambassador was speaking. It was not the world's most high-profile event. It was a photo exhibit at a gallery in Ankara. But the murder was caught on tape. And the images of the assassin after the shooting, these images are scary and indelible. I mean, just looking at this footage all day today, looking at the stills, it's almost impossible to believe that this was a real thing, but this is a real thing. The gunman who you see there, he was eventually killed by police at the scene. He's described as an off-duty police officer, 22 years old. He may have used his police credentials to get inside this venue with the Russian ambassador. But the killing of the Russian ambassador today in Turkey, it comes after days of large-scale protests in Turkey about the civil war in Syria, about Russia's involvement in the siege of the city of Aleppo. But an assassination is not a continuation of protest, right? An assassination is something of a different order. And part of the consequence of this is that this will be seen as a massive security failure on the part of Turkey, that this happened on Turkish soil. But it happened on a day that was just a remarkable string of events. I mean, this news about this assassination, it broke midday here on the east coast of the United States. The shooting happened 7 o'clock local time in Ankara, which is about 11 a.m. on the east coast here in the United States. So we started to get that news breaking around midday here. But right after the news about that assassination started to break here, we also got this incredibly terrible news out of Berlin. Over the past year or so, if you've been watching this show, you've seen us a few times on and off. We've covered the fact that the terrorist group ISIS, they have a magazine that they call Dabik. Dabik is a place. It's a geographic reference. It's a town in Syria. And in ISIS's twisted death cult theology, the little town of Dabik in Syria is where the world's going to end. That's where they think they're going to have the final apocalyptic battle between themselves and all the infidels. And ISIS, when they took over Dabik, one of the things they did was they named their magazine Dabik. And we had wondered and talked about on the air what might happen to that magazine, what might happen to ISIS promoting the apocalyptic myth about that town in Syria once ISIS started losing its territory in Syria and it no longer became clear that they'd be able to hold on to that city. Well, now we know. ISIS has changed the name of its magazine. No longer sure of its hold on a place like Dabik, wanting presumably not to be embarrassed for losing hold of a place that they'd made central to their international propaganda. They no longer call their magazine Dabik. They're playing that whole thing down now. Instead, they've renamed their magazine Rumiyah. which is the classical Arabic word for Rome, as in Rome, Italy. Why they are now calling their magazine Rome, I do not know, but they've got 2 issues of it out now, and the current one, the one that most recently came out last month, it includes yet another article calling on ISIS supporters to mount large-scale attacks in the West using vehicles, using big trucks. Now, this is something that Al-Qaeda had very ham-handedly promoted in their magazine, Inspire, years ago. And then ISIS started doing its magazine, and old issues of Dabiq, the first iteration of the ISIS magazine, they also promoted attacks with vehicles. Now, the latest magazine from ISIS, they are claiming credit for previous attacks on civilians made by ISIS supporters using vehicles, using cars and trucks. They're continuing to promote vehicle attacks as a very low-tech terrorist tactic that's very hard to defend against in open societies. The worst vehicle-borne attack, of course, is the one that happened in Nice, in France, in July. 86 people killed. That's the most high-profile one, and it was the deadliest one. But there have been a lot of smaller-scale attacks with vehicles as well, particularly since ISIS started calling for them explicitly. And the one that happened today in Berlin, involving this large panel truck, semi-trailer, it is not on the scale of what happened in Nice, but it is still one of the worst. At this hour, this has just risen recently, the death toll in the Berlin attack is now 12 people killed and 48 people are injured and in the hospital. Now, in terms of the motivation and the perpetrators of this attack on this Christmas market in Berlin, we have very little information at this point. The ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein, describes what happened in Berlin today as having all the hallmarks of a terrorist attack, and we can see that for ourselves as well, but we know nothing thus far about the killer or the killers or their motivation or their affiliations. There's reportedly one person in custody. There's one person whose body was reportedly found in the passenger compartment of this large-scale black panel truck that plowed into this Christmas market in downtown West Berlin. But we don't know more than that. I expect over the course of this evening that we'll know more, maybe even by the end of this hour. It's interesting, this assassination in Ankara, this terrible assassination of this Russian diplomat in Turkey, and this carnage in Berlin with this vehicle-borne attack on the Christmas market in Berlin. Both of those two very terrible, very dramatic things come right on the heels of 2 other really big attacks that happened yesterday that didn't get as much attention, in part because they happened on Sunday, not Monday, but in large part because they happened outside of the West. They're both a really big deal, though. Yemen yesterday, the port city of Aden in Yemen, a suicide bomber disguised himself as a disabled man. He got himself into a crowd of police officers and soldiers who had reportedly gathered at the end of their work week to collect their salaries. He blew himself up, but he killed 49 other people in the process. Most, if not all of whom, were police officers and soldiers. So that was yesterday in Yemen. Also yesterday, there was a deadly and complex attack by multiple attackers in the nation of Jordan. This one reportedly started with an explosion at an apartment building. Police responded to the explosion. They got shot at in the process. The gunmen then got away, and they drove to a tourist site about 30 miles away from where the explosion had been at that apartment. When they got to the tourist site, they attacked a police station that was adjacent to the tourist site, and then they attacked the tourist site itself. In the end, they ended up killing 7 security officers. They killed 2 Jordanian civilians, and they killed 1 Canadian tourist, a retired teacher from Newfoundland, who was traveling with her son. Her son was also wounded. The further worrying detail about that last attack I just described in Jordan is that when they went back to the site of the initial explosion, they found more guns on site there. They also found more explosives there, and they found fully rigged suicide vests. So they say they killed or captured 4 of the attackers in this attack in Jordan, but we don't know if there were more people than that involved in what was a big and complex multi-site attack. But it looks like, given what they found at the site of the explosion, it could have been an even bigger and more complex attack than it was. So all of that has just happened within the past day. Yemen, Jordan, Ankara, Berlin. There was also a shooting at a mosque in Zurich, Switzerland today, although we have very few details about that. We do know that 3 people were shot and injured. We know absolutely nothing at this point about the assailant in that case, including whether or not the assailant is alive or dead and in custody or at large. So it has been, frankly, I'm sorry to say it, but it's just been a hell of a day. Here at home at 5:30 Eastern Time, we officially got a winner in our presidential election. The president-elect won the election today officially when he got the necessary 270 electoral votes. That was the big domestic news here today. We'll talk a little later on this hour about the electoral college vote, about some of the strange things that happened in the electoral college vote today. That did not go the way it was expected to go. In terms of the transition effort, though, the Guardian newspaper today reports on an aspect of the transition that might give you a little pause if you are a national security voter, or if maybe on a day like today you're starting to think about becoming a national security voter. The Guardian reports today that the staff of the National Security Council is emptying out ahead of the Trump administration arriving in Washington. Now, to be clear, these aren't political appointees. These are not people who are expected to resign as Obama leaves office so they can be replaced by the people who Trump appoints. These are the people who are supposed to stay. These are the staffers. These are national security, non-political professionals. They're not supposed to flip over when a new administration comes in. But apparently there is something about this new administration, particularly the new national security team, right? We've got announcements thus far, right, of the national security advisor and 2 of his deputies. Something about the folks who are on their way in to run the National Security Council has the career national security professionals who work there running for the exits. Quote, this is from The Guardian. Quote, the White House is struggling to prevent a crippling exodus of foreign policy staffers eager to leave before the arrival of the Trump administration. Top-level officials in the National Security Council are political appointees who have to submit resignations and leave in a normal transition. The rest of the 400 National Security Council staff are career civil servants. An unusual number of these more junior officials are now looking to depart. One source telling The Guardian, quote, I have seen and met with a lot of these people,
over,
and there does seem to be an unusual level of worry and concern and fear.
They milked it as long as they could, and they're getting out of there while
there's concern there will be a half-empty National Security Council by the time the new administration arrives. When this terrible assassination happened today in front of all those people in Turkey, and when that truck went smashing into that Christmas market today, just hours later in Berlin, the statements of condemnation and condolence were issued by the spokesman for the National Security Council, for the current iteration of the National Security Council. The plan right now is that in the new administration, the national security spokesperson would be a Fox News commentator who has in the past maintained that President Obama is not really black, he's faking it. She's also suggested that President Obama faked his birth certificate. The national security advisor to whom she will report is found by the Army to have, quote, inappropriately shared classified information with foreign military officers. During the presidential campaign, he publicly accused Hillary Clinton of being a child rapist. And he was on the payroll of the government of Turkey while serving as a top advisor to the Trump campaign without ever publicly disclosing that fact. And the Gong Show / Star Wars bar scene quality of the Trump transition, particularly on national security issues. Honestly, to me, most days it is usually something approaching funny, but it is national security, and it is hard and dangerous and fraught with peril even in good times. But right now, what they are inheriting, these are not good times.
Milk, the gravy is over.
National security, I am
the milk job's done.
That the transition
you better get before you get fired on your
resume.
That's how it is, Rachel.
Why are you sleeping? Come on. What time is it? It's go time. Come on, let's go.
I feel like I went to bed an hour ago. I'll make the cocoa.
Get a great offer on the car of your grown-up dreams at the Mercedes-Benz Winter Event.
There's the look on their faces that makes it all worthwhile.
Now lease the 2017 C300 for $389 a month at your local Mercedes-Benz dealer.
We are at a
time of unprecedented opportunity.
Our understanding of the causes of cancer have increased dramatically.
We fund researchers across the cancer continuum, and we hit cancer at every angle.
Donating to the American Cancer Society, you can feel sure that you are fast-forwarding progress.
Help us end cancer in our lifetime. Make your tax-deductible donation now at cancer.org.
Higher detection rates are the key to winning the war. Once consumers, businesses, and government agencies purchase security products based on detection rates will rise. As AV detection rates rise, ransoms paid due to ransomware decline. Since the motivation of the ransomware mafia are financial, ultimately they will wither and die, and the war will be won. AV Comparatives released the most important antivirus report in a decade, a comprehensive involuntary detection rate test of all major AV engines. PCMagic's whitelist cost 100% of the viruses and 100% of the ransomware attacks. To win the war on ransomware, purchase antivirus with higher detection rates and dump products with lower detection rates. PCMagic Pro is available to protect businesses and government agencies. Only PCMagic does research and development exclusively in the United States. PCMagic costs $50 for 5 computers per year. PCMagic is an Inc. 5000 fastest growing company. Let's win this war.
We have a big show tonight, including a surprise sighting of the next First Lady in a place you would not expect to see her. Also a surprise record from the Electoral College today. We've also got NBC Chief Foreign Correspondent Richard Engel joining us live in just a moment. Stay with us.
I thought I married an Italian.
My lineage was the Vecchios and Zuccolis. Through Ancestry, the DNA, I found out that I was only 16% Italian.
He was 34% Eastern European. So I went on to Ancestry. Soon learned that one of our ancestors we thought was Italian was Eastern European.
This is my ancestor I didn't know about. He looks a little bit like me, yes.
Ancestry has many paths to discovering your story. Get started for free at Ancestry.com.
If you're going to wish big at the Lexus December to Remember sales event. Get up to $2,500 customer cash on select 2016 and 2017 models for these terms. See your Lexus dealer. Fight heartburn fast with Tums Chewy Delights. The mouth-watering soft chew that goes to work in seconds to conquer heartburn fast. Chewy Delights. Only from Tums.
Vladimir Putin goes to the theater. That's a thing I learned today. Tonight in Moscow, Vladimir Putin had tickets to go see a play called Woe from Wit. It's an old Russian play. It was written by Alexander Griboyedov. Alexander Griboyedov is famous in Russia because he was a Russian diplomat who was murdered. He was killed in Tehran in 1829 when a mob of angry Iranians who were mad at Russia about something, they overran the embassy in Tehran and they killed him. And that made him a national hero in Russia. There's a big monument to him in Moscow. Nearly 200 years after he was killed, the works of Alexander Griboyedov are still taught to Russian school kids. Heck, the Russian president goes to see his play.
What a data
He would have tonight, except for the fact that since Alexander Griboyedov, there's never been a Russian ambassador assassinated in his post until that happened today. The last time was Alexander Griboyedov in 1829. The next time was today in Turkey. Joining us now from Istanbul in Turkey is Richard Engel, NBC's chief foreign correspondent. Richard, thanks so much for being with us. I appreciate you staying up for us.
Absolutely, and as you said, it has been an incredible day. And it is still developing. There are still new reports coming out. An incident at the U.S. the embassy in Ankara that is developing right now as well. So it has been a very long day.
Let me ask you about that. This is something, again, we don't have confirmation of this. What we've got is local reports that somebody with a gun tried to get into the U.S. embassy in Ankara, in the capital city of Turkey. Do we know if those local reports are true? Do we have any corroboration on that?
there are now multiple local reports, so they've just put out a photograph. And it is of a fairly elderly gentleman who was apparently carrying a shotgun. He fired several rounds into the air, 5, 6, 7 rounds into the air, and then was taken into custody by police. It does not seem like this was a organized terrorist attack based on his age, the weapon that he was carrying, the fact that the embassy was closed at the time. Frankly, it sounds more like an angry reaction. There has been a lot of reporting in this country online, on Twitter, also on some of the state television, blaming the killing of the Russian ambassador on the CIA, blaming it on the media. There has been a lot of anti-Western sentiment that has been whipped up really since the failed coup attempt in this country, and that every time there is an incident, and like there was an incident today, you hear more of this conspiracy theories and more of this rhetoric. So from what it appears like, it was some angry person who grabbed his shotgun, fired some rounds off into the air. We contacted the State Department. The State Department official just said that they are aware of an incident and referred us to Turkish authorities. But that said, it does not seem to be like an organized terrorist attack or an assassination like the one that we saw earlier today against the Russian.
And Richard, I mean, it's actually fascinating and helpful to hear about the sort of conspiracy theories that are circulating, blaming the West, blaming the media, blaming the CIA for what happened today to the Russian ambassador in Ankara. I mean, that's good to know, but do we have any more information in terms of the assailant and what motivated him and whether he was linked to anyone and why he wanted to kill the ambassador?
We know quite a bit because he was talking throughout this incident, and there were cameras there, as you mentioned earlier, this extraordinary AP photographer. So this was a normal diplomatic event, the kind of event that happens all over the world, that embassies host. This was an art exhibit to highlight Russian culture. Relations have been poor between Turkey and Russia, so these kind of events are designed to improve things. The ambassador was there. A few journalists showed up because it's an opportunity to mingle with diplomats, mingle with the Russian ambassador. As soon as he started to give his opening remarks, a man dressed as a security guard, standing behind him, quietly behind him, pulled this pistol out and opened fire. He shot the ambassador in the back. Then he started shouting, first in Arabic, Allahu Akbar, and identifying himself as those who have pledged allegiance to Muhammad and the jihad. He was holding up one finger. You mentioned Dabiq. Pretty much every single person who's in that magazine is seen holding up that one finger. Is it a jihadi symbol, meaning the oneness of God, one religion, one path. And then he, as the ambassador was lying dead on the ground, he started to smash some of the photographs on the wall. It was a photography exhibit. Then he came back, shot the ambassador again with a coup de grace in the head, and then was talking about Syria. He was saying that those who are responsible for the crimes in Syria will pay a heavy price, saying that remember Aleppo, remember the suffering in Syria. And as it is well known, and as many U.S. officials have been talking about recently, Russia has been deeply involved in a brutal assault against the city of Aleppo and other cities in that country. And there's been a lot of anger here in this country. We also know he was a police officer. He did use, according to a security official, his police badge to get into the facility. Then once he was inside, even though he wasn't supposed to be there, he wasn't on duty, he blended in with the crowd. He looked the part. He was the part. He just wasn't supposed to be there at the time. The Russian ambassador didn't have his own personal security detail, and it's very possible the ambassador thought that he was just standing behind him because he was assigned to do that, until obviously he pulled out his gun and opened fire, only shooting at the ambassador, but 3 other people were injured as the shots were being fired in this quite small gallery space.
Richard Engel, NBC News chief foreign correspondent for us tonight in Istanbul. Richard, thank you. I appreciate you being with us tonight.
Absolutely.
Again, as we
the
are
ambassador.
following these multiple incidents, there have been a number of attacks of various kinds over the past few days. Large-scale attacks in Yemen yesterday, a significant complex attack yesterday in Jordan, and now a shooting in a mosque in Zurich in Switzerland in which 3 people were injured. The assassination of the Russian ambassador to Turkey, which we were just discussing with Richard, and then this large-scale attack in Germany. Again, the death toll tonight over the course of the evening has gone from 9 people killed in that attack on the Christmas market in Germany to now 12. 12 people killed, 48 people injured and in hospital. It's possible that that death toll may rise. But of course, we pray that it won't.
Be elected again.
Lots going on. Stay with us, please.
Hi, we're the Holford Quads. We're in 8th grade. Technology is the only thing that really entertains us. I'm going to use this picture on Sketchbook, and I'm going to draw mustaches on you all using the pen instead of fingers. It just feels more comfortable for me. Be like, boop, it's gone. I like that only I can get into it and that it recognizes my fingerprint. Our old tablet couldn't do that. It kind of makes you feel like you're your own person, which is a rare opportunity in my family.
As soon as I became a parent, I changed as a person drastically. I tried hard to quit smoking. But when we brought our daughter home, that was it. Now I have Nicoderm CQ.
The Nicoderm CQ patch with unique extended release technology helps prevent your urge to smoke all day.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. You say thanks, Nicoderm CQ? Every great why needs a great how.
Walked around the shelter, no intention of adopting. He was the very last kennel in the very last row, emaciated. He was skin and bones, usually what you see in neglected dogs. It was one of those complete meant-to-be moments. I totally fell in love with him.
Through the Subaru Share the Love event, we've helped the ASPCA save nearly 30,000 animals so far. Get a new Subaru and we'll donate another $250 to help those in need.
Put a little love in your heart.
Meet the hopefuls.
162.53, please. We went over budget again. I use Flip to stay on budget. You make your list and it shows you weekly circulars and coupons in your area. And the best part is, it's free.
Flip, download the app today.
Every batch of kettle wine must be personally approved with the signature of a member of the NOLAD family. And the signature must be approved by a forgery expert. And a penmanship expert. And an identity theft expert.
What was the name of your first bet?
B.
Baker's correct.
You don't understand. It has to be perfect.
I'm really into this car, but how do I know if I'm getting a good deal? I tell TrueCar my zip or which car I want, and TrueCar shows the range of prices people in my area actually paid for the same car, so I know if I'm getting a great price. This is how car buying was always meant to be. This is TrueCar.
This is what you woke up for. This is your Peloton. This is your instructor, Robin. Robin is not going to go easy on you. This is you attacking the hill, crushing the flats, finding your way through the pack. This is how you make a better day for yourself and your family. Here in your home. This is Peloton.
You have a vision. It's behind everything you do. Even when you least expect it, it comes through. You know what you want, and we can help make it real. You need choices? We've got all kinds, including special finishes and papers. And they're all absolutely guaranteed, because you have a vision, and we have your car. 500 start at just $9.99 when you enter BC500 at Vistaprint.com.
If you are ever so lucky as to become a president-elect of the United States, you should know that one of the things you get along with that title is free office space in this building. The General Services Administration handles the logistical needs of the next president, including office space. Every president-elect gets a transition office in the GSA building. So our president-elect now, he's got office space in D.C. You and I are paying for it as taxpayers. But he's not really using it. Instead, he has been conducting most of the business of the presidential transition from his house, from his apartment building in Midtown Manhattan, and for a number of reasons, but particularly for people who are trying to cover the presidential transition, that has posed some challenges. I want you to watch this tape. This is reporters trying to cover some protesters who had just come to the president-elect's transition offices to plead their case. Watch.
This is the microphone.
1 second.
We're just taking it easy. Take it easy. Hold on. Let everybody get in the place for you.
1 second.
We're give some real good.
Wait 1 minute. There you go. Okay. So we are here to deliver over 400.
Whoa, don't grab the mic. Don't you have to grab the mic, sir? That's our mic.
400,000 signatures. No, you. Are you the proposal? It's about violation of the foreign bribery clause. They won't let them stop?
If you're trying to cover the goings-on of the highest-profile public office in the world, let alone this country, when the hub of all that activity happens not at taxpayer-funded offices or in public, but instead inside the incoming president's house, it turns out that comes with some confusing and hard-to-predict restrictions on what kind of news coverage, if any, is allowed in that space. And that's the least of it. The really spooky part of it is next. Stay with us.
This is a time like no other. A time of change and uncertainty. Not just for the country, but for the world. This is when we all need to step up, be more vigilant than ever, and continue to hold all sides accountable. Let's figure this out together.
Sales event is on. Get exceptional offers on the Lincoln family of luxury vehicles. Sign and drive off in a new 2017 Lincoln MKC with 0 down and a complimentary first month's payment.
I used to handwrite lists to find out which website had my ideal hotel for the cheapest. Just scribbling all my options underneath each other. Well, Trivago does exactly that for me, saving me lots of time and money. Hotel Trivago.
Gaviscon is a proven heartburn remedy that gives you fast-acting, long-lasting relief. It immediately neutralizes acid, and only Gaviscon helps keep acid down for hours. For fast-acting, long-lasting relief, try doctor-recommended Gaviscon.
Liberty Mutual stood with me when I was too busy with the kids to get a repair estimate.
Liberty did what?
Yeah, with Liberty Mutual, all I needed to do to get an estimate was snap a photo of the damage, and voila.
I wish my insurance company had that. Wait, hold it, boys. It's supposed to be 3 of you. Where's your brother? Where's your brother? Hey, where's Charlie? Charlie?
You can leave worry behind when Liberty stands with you. Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance. When you're close to the people you love, does psoriasis ever get in the way of a touching moment? If you have moderate to severe psoriasis, you can embrace the chance of completely clear skin with Taltz. Taltz is proven to give you a chance at completely clear skin. With Taltz, up to 90% of patients had a significant improvement of their psoriasis plaques. In fact, 4 out of 10 even achieved completely clear skin. Do not use if you are allergic to Taltz. Before starting, you should be checked for tuberculosis. Taltz may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Tell your doctor if you are being treated for an infection or have symptoms, or if you have received a vaccine or plan to. Inflammatory bowel disease can happen with Taltz, including worsening of symptoms. Serious allergic reactions can occur. Now's your chance at completely clear skin. Just ask your doctor about Taltz.
This is a man named Webster Griffin Terpley, which is a great name. Webster Griffin Terpley is an academic. He has written several books, none of which I hereby endorse. There is 9/11 Synthetic Terror, which says the 9/11 attacks were made up, they were fake, they were an inside job. In 2012, he branched out to Just Too Weird, Bishop Romney and the Mormon Takeover of America. And that one, he says, Mormonism isn't actually a religion, it's a synthetic ideology sponsored by British intelligence as part of a covert warfare campaign against the United States. Okay. There's also this one, which says President Obama is actually the puppet of Jimmy Carter's National Security Advisor, who installed
Nobody else can read them except for me.
Hey, who cares, right? You got the idea. But it will arrive before Christmas if you order now. If you want to get truly weird with this guy, though, there's also Webster Griffin Tarpley's truly wacky conspiracy theory that the incoming First Lady of the United States is out to get him. She's sending high-priced, high-powered lawyers after him for defamation in what sure looks like an effort to intimidate journalists and bloggers and bankrupt him. Actually, the last one is true. In September, the next First Lady, Melania Trump, she filed a defamation lawsuit against old wacky Mr. Tarpley over one of his blog posts. He had blogged that it was, quote, widely known that Melania Trump was not working as a model when she first came to the United States, but as a high-end escort. In fact, that is not widely known, and there is no evidence of that. He also claimed, though, that the future First Lady was having a nervous breakdown after the plagiarism scandal surrounding her speech at the Republican convention. There was also no evidence and no reporting to suggest that either. But again, this is the guy who says Mormonism is a British intelligence plot. And President Obama is a secret Jimmy Carter puppet. So who cares, right? Rather than let this nutbird stuff just dissipate on its own, which it does, the future First Lady decided to sue Webster Griffin Tarpley. She also sued the Daily Mail, which is a not particularly well-regarded tabloid in the UK. Daily Mail published similar allegations. Mrs. Trump's lawyer said in a statement that the blog posts from Mr. Tarpley and that the Daily Mail published, they were actions, quote, so egregious, malicious, and harmful to Mrs. Trump that her damages are estimated at $150 million. But you know what? That was September. That was the heat of the presidential campaign. Both the conspiracy theory guy and the Daily Mail removed the posts in question. They both issued apologies. They both issued retractions. And now that Melania Trump is going to be First Lady of the United States, you might expect that the First Lady wouldn't be suing every conspiracy theory website and, you know, lower than usual tabloid that prints any made-up stuff about her. You'd expect that. But now, not only is the lawsuit going forward, the soon-to-be First Lady, Melania Trump, last week, she went all the way to Maryland to be in the courtroom in person for this case. And this was not for critical testimony or anything. This was a routine scheduling conference. This is like the lawyers and the judge just working out future court dates. Hardly any plaintiff ever shows up to these things. But there was the incoming First Lady in person in that Maryland courtroom last week. She showed up. And her attorney said about that, quote, Mrs. Trump was not required to attend the court conference, but chose to do so, to meet the judge, meet opposing counsel, and show her commitment to this case. He said she looks forward to seeing the case through to a successful conclusion. Here's the really interesting part. That lawyer's name is Charles Harder. His history here is very important. He has proved himself on a case like this before. Charles Harder was the lawyer in the Hulk Hogan case. When Hulk Hogan sued the website Gawker for posting that sex tape of him, Charles Harder, the lawyer, and Hulk Hogan, they prevailed in that lawsuit against Gawker. They won a $140 million judgment against Gawker. A judgment that bankrupted that entire media company and shut down Gawker.com. And you may remember what we learned at the end of that case, which is where that case came from. Silicon Valley billionaire Peter Thiel secretly financed the Hulk Hogan lawsuit with the express purpose of destroying Gawker and putting it out of business, because Peter Thiel had a personal grudge against Gawker. He didn't like the way they covered him, and he's a billionaire, so he used his limitless financial resources to drive them out of existence. And Peter Thiel is now a member of Donald Trump's presidential transition team. He's the guy who convened his new boss's round table of tech executives a few days ago, where the president-elect thanked him for doing such a good job picking and choosing which companies got to come to that meeting. The incoming First Lady of the United States is using the same lawyer that he used to destroy a media company to pursue her own defamation suits against websites who say unkind things about her. The president-elect's point person on technology is the man who forced a media company out of business because he didn't like the way they covered him and he tried to do it secretly. And they are each in the near orbit of the president-elect, who still daily denounces the American news media as dishonest, and who spent part of last week attacking a magazine that ran a bad review of one of his restaurants. That's what he's concerning himself with a month before he becomes freaking president of the United States.
Say what?
You don't have to be in the news business to be a little worried about the news business right now. Hold that thought. Stay with us.
Around so fast. Take the reins this holiday season and get the Mercedes-Benz you've always wanted during the winter event. Now lease the 2017 GLA 250 for $329 a month at your local Mercedes-Benz dealer.
You can't predict the market, but through good times and bad, at T. Rowe Price, we've helped our investors stay confident for over 75 years. Call us or your advisor. T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence.
As soon as I became a parent, I changed as a person drastically. I tried hard to quit smoking. But when we brought our daughter home, that was it. Now I have Nicoderm CQ.
The Nicoderm CQ patch with unique extended release technology helps prevent your urge to smoke all day.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. You say thanks, Nicoderm CQ? Every great wine needs a great hound.
First large grants was from the American Cancer Society, and it has been critical for my career. The research fund that has really contributed to reduce the mortality from breast cancer. The American Cancer Society is funding research that is significant, that has an impact, that is innovative.
Help us end cancer in our lifetime. Make your tax-deductible donation now at cancer.org.
Natalie Portman has been nominated for the Golden Globe and Screen Actors Guild Award for Best Actress in Jackie. Dignity. When our nation was shattered, her courage united the world. Jackie, rated R.
They're saying, as president, he shouldn't be doing rallies, but I think we should, right? Yeah. We've done everything else the opposite. Well, no, this is the way you get an honest word out. Because you can't give it to them because they're so dishonest.
And by they, the dishonest ones, he means the reporters who cover his events. And soon to be his presidency. Joining us now is Paul Farhi. He's covers media for the Washington Post. Mr. Farhi, it's really nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rachel.
I take it as an article of faith that all presidents hate the press, or at least say that they hate the press. Is there anything, in terms of what's going on with the Trump transition in the Trump White House, is there anything that's any different than usual?
Yes, he hates us a lot. There has been no candidate, no president-elect, no president who has vilified us, criticized us, and demonized us the way Donald Trump has. I think he's created a real climate of hatred. There's no other word for it, but hatred against the press and against the mainstream media. He's cast a lot of doubt on what we do. He's implicated the very nature of fact. You know, what we publish is up for grabs from a lot of the people who support him, and he's been inflaming that.
Other presidents who have attacked the press, and politicians at all levels who have attacked the press, have done it because the press is a convenient foil. The press isn't particularly well liked by the American people. It's not a particularly strong industry in terms of the business of doing media, the business of doing news, particularly in local media. Things are tough for reporters and editors and local reporters. and local news anchors and stuff. When you take it to the further degree that you're describing, is there an additional political benefit that you get other than just picking a political foil? Why is he doing this?
Well, it enhances his power. Don't listen to those guys in the press. Don't listen to the naysayers, the critics, the opinion mongers. Listen to me. I'm the President of the United States, or soon to be the President of the United States, and what I say is the truth. What they're saying, the criticism that for the history of this country, the press has always been inveighing against the people in power. Ignore it. It means nothing, and it's a lie. And that's the climate that he has created and is creating. And that's the whole purpose of criticizing us constantly.
There's something that's going on the sort of the sidelines of the transition, which feels like more than just criticism, more than the sort of 2 minutes of hate that he directs at the press at his rallies, and that is the future First Lady. His wife showed up in person last week in a Maryland courtroom where she's suing a sort of low-level blogger conspiracy theorist guy for $150 million, and her lawyer in that case is the lawyer that was used by Silicon Valley billionaire Trump transition official Peter Thiel to put Gawker.com out of business. Where do you see that going, and what do you make of that?
Well, first of all, you can't justify what this guy published. This was rumor, this was innuendo. On the other hand, he retracted it. But really, this is kind of a message to the rest of the press, which is, if you dare, you'll face some very, very serious consequences. And, you know, this is part of a larger scheme in some sense. Trump demonizes us. It gets juries very much inflamed against us. Then you have things like the Gawker verdict, in which it's overwhelming to Gawker and puts them out of business. So, you know, what he's doing here with this low-level blogger is to send a message to the rest of the press, is you publish at your peril, and you'll face consequences that could be ruinous to you.
Paul Fari, reporter for the Washington Post, whose beat in terms of covering the media and politics just got way pricklier than it usually is. Paul, thank you. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Can I give it to you straight? That airline credit card you have, it could be better. It's time to shake things up. With the Capital One Venture Card, you get double miles on everything you buy, not just airline purchases. Seriously, think of all the things you buy. Great. Is this why you asked me to coffee? Well, yeah, but also to catch up. What's in your wallet?
Now playing on DirecTV Cinema. How long were you a slave of Rome?
5 years.
What is your name?
Venice. My family was betrayed by my own brother. I'm gonna go about it.
Defeat him in the arena, and you'll have your vengeance.
We're having fun now, brother.
Movies start at Channel 125.
Your living room TV. If only you could bring it with you anywhere you went. It's got everything. Your live channels. Instant access to the best entertainment. Plus your recorded shows. The only problem is, it's stuck in your living room. Well, not anymore. Finally, you have the power to make the world your living room. Now the live channels you love and watch at home are with you anywhere. Download the new free DirecTV app. It's your TV. Take it with you.
California is a little different. For one thing, California has a Governor Moonbeam.
Some people say that they're going to turn off the satellites that are monitoring the climate, low Earth phenomena, the Landsat, and all the various measuring satellites that we have. Well, I remember back in 1978, I proposed a Landsat satellite for California. They called me Governor Moonbeam because of that. I didn't get that moniker for nothing. And if Trump turns off the satellites, California will launch its own damn satellite. We're going to collect that data.
California Governor Jerry Brown can crow about launching his own satellites with perfect confidence because California is big enough and frankly blue enough to back that up. And by blue enough, I mean this. Look at this. California has officially, as of today, certified its vote, and Hillary Clinton won California by a larger than 30-point margin. She got the biggest Democratic margin in that state since FDR beat Alf Landon. So yes, California, you can launch your own climate satellites. You can stand up Governor Moonbeam against the Trump agenda. You can promise blue dot Americans and the rest of the country that California will have their backs. Posting the biggest win by a Democrat since 1936 in a country where the Democrat lost.
Come up with a satellite, but you can't
That gets you something other than bragging rights. In this case, it probably gets you room to move politically. And one of the most interesting things to watch in politics this next year will be how California intends to use that advantage. I'm telling you. Watch this space.
We have the laws, we have the tools of enforcement, and we have the political will. And we will set the stage, we'll set the example, and whatever Washington thinks they're doing, California is the future.
We had a big election. I haven't had a chance to catch up with you, so it's good to be with you.
My word, Congressman, are you taking a victory lap? Is that what you're doing?
No. In fact, I with some interest read your tweets about the election of 140 years ago. The Tilden Hayes conflict. Was that a relative of yours?
That Hayes was in these United States way before the Hayeses of my ancestors were.
You have a Republican in your background. That's what I was trying to figure out.
My grandfather, boy, man, he was all the way.
Herrera is lost to us.
We must go find him.
The moment you set foot in that country, you step into high danger.
Rolling Stone, Time Magazine, and the National Border Review call Martin Scorsese's Silence one of the best pictures of the year.
There is evil in this place.
This is a film for the ages.
I will not abandon you.
Silence, rated R. In select theaters December 23rd and everywhere January 13th.
TrueCar is great for finding new cars. You're smart, you already knew that. But it's also great for finding the perfect used car. You'll see what a fair price is, and you can connect with a TrueCar certified dealer. Now you're even smarter. This is TrueCar.
Fight heartburn fast with Tums Chewy Delights. The mouth-watering soft chew that goes to work in seconds to conquer heartburn fast. Chewy Delights. Only from Tums.
Yeah, at first I thought it was just the stress of moving.
Hey, I was using that.
Think we own stock in the electric company? I will turn this car around right now.
There's nobody back there.
I was becoming my father.
It's been an adjustment, but we're making it work. You know, Progressive.com makes it easy for us to get the right home insurance.
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto.
Searching for a hotel online is pretty much like this. Some deals fly right past you, and you'll never see them again. And some just don't fit. With Trivago,
You're in charge. Simply choose what's important to you and find what you want. Trivago makes sure you see the deals you care about, so you can find your ideal hotel for the best price. Hotel Trivago.
I've roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts. And all around me, a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me.
Hundreds of people protested at the Michigan State Capitol in Lansing today, despite temperatures in the teens. There were similar scenes in state capitals in North Carolina and Arizona, California and Texas, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. All of these protests today were aimed at the Electoral College, which voted today to officially make Donald Trump the winner of the presidential election, even though Hillary Clinton won nearly 3 million more votes. The protesters were out there today to try to persuade Trump electors to flip their votes. In fact, we did see a historic number of electors defect today. 7 electors voted for somebody other than the person they were supposed to vote for. That's the most ever. 2 Trump electors from Texas switched their vote. They instead cast ballots for Ron Paul or John Kasich. But most of the electors who defected were actually electors who were supposed to vote for Hillary Clinton. 4 of Hillary Clinton's Washington state electors voted for somebody else. 3 voted for Colin Powell, of all people. Okay. And 1 additional elector in Washington state voted for Faith Spotted Eagle, who's a Native American leader and an opponent of the Dakota Access Pipeline. But wait, there's more. Just a short time ago, one of the Democratic electors in Hawaii, who was supposed to vote for Hillary Clinton, he also broke ranks and voted for Bernie Sanders. So that's part of the scorecard forever. Today's results will be counted by Congress on January 6th, but today the Electoral College made it official. Those people all get votes. Hillary Clinton gets some votes, but Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. That does it for us tonight. We will see you again tomorrow. Now it's time for the last with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. We got a lot of breaking news to get to. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thanks, my friend.